that you have developed so that you have a proficiency in them. And then knowing what your values are and what's important to you, knowing what you want to get out of the work experience can help guide what kinds of opportunities you want to look for. And all of these lead to understanding what your purpose is, which can help you in your career development and determining what kinds of opportunities you're looking for as well. So where do you start? First, you have to identify what you're looking for. Are you looking for an internship? Are you looking for a part-time opportunity, a full-time opportunity? Are you just looking at career exploration? Are you just trying to understand what kinds of job opportunities are out there? Maybe you're not ready to actually apply yet, but you still need to do some searching to find out what kinds of skills you might need to add and, as you move forward in school, or just learning what the career options are for your major and your areas of interest. So as San Jose State students, you have access to Handshake. I know that we have non-San Jose State students joining us today, so LinkedIn is another good source for starting for any of these things that you might be pursuing. So how do you approach your search? Online job searching is obviously where you're going to be starting because that's, everybody has job boards, both, your university or your college might have job boards, individual companies often have a career section. So you want to look at general job boards, and I'll talk more specifically about that in a moment. And depending on what industry you're looking to get into, there might be industry-specific job boards. Perhaps there's a professional association that, that might have a job board associated with the area of engineering that you're interested in. So you want to expand your search by looking at different job boards. Marketing yourself. It's very important to have a very well-polished resume that is, customized for each opportunity that you're trying to apply for, having a cover letter, and then if you're using LinkedIn as one of your job search techniques, then you definitely need to have a good LinkedIn profile to make yourself stand out. And lastly, networking, both online and in person, doing informational interviews, which means talking to people that might be doing the jobs that you're trying to either find out more information about or try to find out whether it's something that you wanted to pursue. So connecting with perhaps alumni or just people that you might know through your family or friends that are doing the jobs that you might be interested in, and then asking them questions about what that job looks like so that you can try to understand whether that might be a good fit for you. So making connections with people can help you with your search. So online search strategies. I have just a few examples of different online job boards here. Again, Handshake is available at San Jose State and other local universities and national universities. DICE is something specific to more software and IT opportunities. LinkedIn, I already mentioned. Glassdoor, I don't have the Indeed logo up here, but there's lots of different job boards that you can use for your searches. And so I have some tips for how you would go about doing your searches online. You want to check the posting and closing dates. Every company has a different hiring process. But even if they are waiting until the close date to look at the applications, it's never a bad thing to be on the early end of the application pool because maybe they're looking at them as they come in. But even again, as I said, even if they're waiting until the closing date to look at the applications, having your application in early is never going to be a bad thing. You want to check the employment qualifications, and understand the expectations of the employers. So, you want to be applying to appropriate positions. If you're looking at an internship, you wouldn't be applying for a full-time job. If you have a bachelor's, if you're working towards a bachelor's, you're not going to be applying to master's or doctoral jobs. And you want to look at the job description because that is, roadmap for what the employer is looking for, as far as particular skills, possibly job tasks and things that you would be doing, so that you can understand whether the job would be a good fit for you. Now, when I say look at the qualifications and the expectations of the employers, I don't mean for this to scare you off of applying to different opportunities. You're often not going to meet all of the qualifications that are in a job description, but you can't possibly get the job if you don't apply for it. So our typical rule of thumb is if you have about 50% of the qualifications, go ahead and apply for it. If it's a job that you feel like you can do and that you're interested in doing, go ahead and apply for it. Let the employer decide whether you have the qualifications that they need to be hired. And sometimes you might not have all of the required qualifications, but you have some of the preferred qualifications, and it would be up to the employer to decide which of those is going to be the most important for being successful in the job. So moving on, we have more tips. Apply frequently. What does that mean? You know, students say, how many opportunities should I be applying for? I can't give you a number. Certainly quantity is a part of the equation, but quality is as well. So when I say apply frequently, I mean, don't just apply for one and then wait to see if you get a response and then apply for another. You are going to want to set a reasonable goal for yourself as to how many opportunities that you can reasonably apply for. And how many opportunities, depending on what kinds of jobs you're looking for, how many opportunities might be out there, right? So I can't say if you have to apply for 100 opportunities, because that may not be reasonable either in the time that you have available, because you're also students. And then also, you know, depending on how narrow the field is that you're looking at, there may not be that many opportunities, particularly for, say, internships in the field that you specifically want to apply in. You want to customize your applications. Don't send out a generic resume. You know, if you're going to an in-person event and you don't know exactly the kinds of opportunities, you can have a somewhat generic resume, but you still want it to be customized to the field that you're looking to get into. As I mentioned before, you want to really look at the job description, and that will help you customize your resume. And when I say customize, I don't mean you have to start from scratch for every single resume. I often recommend to students to have sort of a master resume, because certainly you've got more projects and different experiences that you gain throughout your college career than you could possibly fit on a one-page resume. So maybe write them up so that you can pick and choose based on the job description which skills you want to highlight with the projects that you choose to put on your resume. And then try different try a variety of different searches using different keywords. Job titles are really hard to search by because every company has their own naming rules as to how they would title different jobs and things like that. So you're going to want to use keywords based on either the skills that you're looking to use and or develop in the opportunity. Maybe a software package. For example, if you're a mechanical engineer, you might search by CAD or SolidWorks. You know, if you're an electrical engineer, you know, there would be different search words that you would use. So take some time to determine what the keywords for industry that might be included in a job description would be. For example, if you find a job description that you're like, oh, this is perfect, maybe pull some of the keywords out of that job description to use to search for other jobs, okay? All right, so market yourself. You've got to have a resume. And objective is a big, do you have one? Do you not have one? I'm a big proponent of objectives because it's sort of like a thesis statement for your resume. It tells the employer how they should be reviewing their resume. It's going to be different depending on whether you're going to an event or whether you're applying online. It can be as simple as what the position title is and what the company name is. For example, seeking electrical engineering internship at Cisco, right? That can be your targeted objective. Or, you know, say you're a software engineer and you're looking for back-end opportunities. It could be a little bit more general, like seeking internship or full-time opportunity, depending on what's appropriate in back-end engineering. So you want to have a project section because as a student, your projects may be the best way for you to highlight the skills that you're developing, that you're going to be using in this opportunity that you're applying for. You can also highlight leadership and teamwork in addition to your skills in the way that you describe your projects. So you can say led a team of 4, and so that shows both leadership and teamwork, right? So because a lot of the projects will be in a group. You can also highlight whether it was a project that you did on your own, separate from school, because sometimes that has more impact with an employer because it's something that you did on your own time that shows you're interested in the subject matter. So as I mentioned earlier, you want to use industry terminology when you're writing your bullet points. So, you know, try to mirror the language of the job description. Make sure you're using the terms that are used in industry to describe the things that you're doing so that they can see the skills that you're using are the skills that you would be using for the opportunity. You want to emphasize your campus activities and involvement. For example, you could have a bullet that says that you were an attendee at the 2020 Women in Engineering Conference, or if you were a volunteer at a conference, or particularly if you presented at a conference. Those kinds of things are good to have on your resume. Obviously, you want to proofread. The number one complaint is grammar and spelling errors, and you want to just have a consistent and clean format that's easy to read. If you're applying online, you want to be careful about the format of your resume to make sure that it's readable by the system that's receiving it. You want to be careful about icons or templates or tables. The other common mistake I see on resumes from students is not leaving enough of a margin. They're trying to fit all this information on their resume, and so they're not leaving enough margin. And so I have seen student resumes where I print the resume out and the name on the top of the resume is half cut off because they're not leaving enough space. And you definitely want to respect that when you're applying online so that the information that you're wanting to convey to the employer is coming through. We do have a resume and cover letter guide, and this is on the San Jose State Career Center website, but it's on the website, so anyone can access this, and I'm going to have some other resources at the end of the presentation as well. In addition to your resume, you want to have a social media profile. If you're using things like LinkedIn to use in your job search, you want to claim your LinkedIn URL so that it has your name as opposed to that big long number that attaches when you create a profile. You want to use industry keywords when you're describing your experiences on the profile. And you can look at other professionals' profiles for examples. You know, how do they describe their experiences? Ask for recommendations and skill endorsements. And you want to fill out 100% of your profile. This is a website that links to university resources that LinkedIn has put together. So there's a profile checklist, and there's various videos and PDFs on how to use LinkedIn for your search. San Jose State students have access to LinkedIn Learning for free, and there's like a Learn LinkedIn, video on LinkedIn Learning, so that you can actually watch a video from a LinkedIn professional about how to use LinkedIn for various purposes. Okay, so the last thing I mentioned in conducting your search was networking. So, you know, you hear networking all the time, network, but what is it? It's about developing relationships. This isn't just about gathering connections. You actually want to develop relationships with the people that are in your network. So you have relationships that are already existing with your classmates, your professor, your advisor, family, friends, things like that. But then you want to look at what other relationships do you need to develop to help with your career development and your job search. It's sharing of information and resources. So I mentioned, you know, your classmates are already part of your network. You know, my friend in my class might be looking for a slightly different opportunity than I am. So if I run across something that they might find interesting, or they find something that's working for them in their job search, you can share information and resources with each other as peers as well. It's about genuine and honest connection. This isn't about what can I get from you? Can you get me a job? It has to be a real relationship, not just using of other people. And it's not just for sociable types. Even as an introvert, you can still network. It's both in person and online, and I'll talk about both of those. It takes time and requires follow-up. Like I said, it's not just gathering of connections. You actually need to follow up, otherwise it's not a relationship. If you connect with somebody and then 2 years later say, hey, how about that job that we talked about? That doesn't work very well. It's polite and friendly and professional. You actually network every day, you just don't realize it. Okay, so making connections in person. That's a little harder right now, but hopefully these bans will be lifted and I'm still gonna talk about it. It's more memorable to get in front of somebody in person. It's more meaningful because you can actually have a back and forth conversation. If you're communicating digitally, it's, you're asking a question, you're waiting for an answer. And so it's more meaningful to have the connection in person. And it's longer lasting. If I'm standing in front of you, I'm gonna make a different kind of impact than if I'm just one of 100 emails that you got that morning, right? So ways to connect in person: employer events, job fairs, informational interviews, alumni panels, meetups, conferences. So all of these things will at some point be resumed, so just keep that in mind. So when you are networking in person, you want to do some preparation. For example, if you're going to a conference, you want to look at what sessions are being conducted. Who do you want to make sure that you connect with and talk to? What do you want to get out of the event that you're going to? Are you going for just career exploration? Is there a particular company that you're targeting? Do you just want to get information about career paths? Are you specifically trying to apply for internships or full-time jobs? So your preparation is going to be informed by what you're trying to get out of the event, right? Appearance is important, and you want it to be appropriate to the event that you're going to. Sometimes conferences are more casual, whereas career fairs, you might want to go a little bit more formal for official or recruiting events. So be aware of what the expectation is for the event as far as how you would present yourself. And it's never a bad thing to be more formal. It's always better to be more formal than more casual. Than if you're not exactly sure, shoot for more formal rather than less. Manners. If you're at a conference and you're trying to talk to the speaker after the presentation, you don't want to just walk up and interrupt another conversation that they might be having. If you're at a recruitment event, there are often lines to talk to the employers, so you want to wait your turn and not take too much of the recruiter or the presenter's time, because other people are going to be wanting to talk to them too. So all of these things are taken into consideration. Eye contact: when you're talking to someone, you want to look them in the eye, right? Enthusiasm. Show enthusiasm for the subject matter. Don't look like you're at the dentist when you're trying to network in person. You want to actually be engaged in the process. And then follow up. Ask them if you can connect with them on LinkedIn, or send a thank you email, thanking them for the time that they spent talking to you. If they made a recommendation about a blog to follow or a skill that you needed to build, let them know what you're doing to follow up on those recommendations. All right, know your audience. When you're networking in person, it's not always going to be the professional pitch, that elevator speech, that that 1 minute conversation about who you are and your major and what you're trying to accomplish in your career. Sometimes it's what we call professional small talk, just to get to talk to someone who you haven't met at a gathering. So, and for professional small talk, maybe it's a more informal setting, maybe it's a meetup of a group at a local restaurant or something like that. or even sometimes conferences would fall under this when you're talking to other attendees, or even student organization gatherings. It could be peers or colleagues, and it's not always career focused, because when you're just trying to start a conversation with someone that you haven't met yet, you're not necessarily going to just walk up to anybody on the street and say, "Hi, my name is Kelly Masegian, and I'm a mechanical engineering student at San Jose State, and I'm really looking for an internship." Right? You're going to lead with something about, the weather, or if you're at a conference, how many times have you been to this conference? What sessions are you interested in? So it's a different kind of conversation that, depending on who the person that you're speaking to is, might lead into a professional pitch, which is more for formal settings, official recruitment events, where there are employers and recruiters there expecting to talk to you about what opportunities you're looking for, and it absolutely should be career focused. So you might start with the professional small talk and end with the professional pitch, or you might be going to an event where the expectation is to lead off with the professional pitch. All right, some of us feel like this, hopefully only on the inside, when we are thinking about talking to other people. So you want to relax and be yourself. You want to start with a question. If you're talking about professional small talk, how do you start a conversation? It's easy to start a conversation by asking a question. Do you know the speaker? Have you heard the speaker before? Is this your first event? What brings you to this meeting? Comments about the venue, traffic, parking, the weather. So, any of these questions would be appropriate for breaking the ice. Introduce yourself, ask them a question. If it's a student event, and it's a student that you haven't met, you could ask what their major is. If it's an industry event, you could ask about, what is it that they do, or how did they get interested in this field? And there are definitely topics that you should avoid. The big ones are religion, politics, roommate or boyfriend, girlfriend drama, especially when you're talking to someone new that you have never met before. You don't know how they feel on these particular topics, hot button topics, so you're not going to lead with, a conversation about the 2020 elections, or something like that. So save those for family and close friends that you can either know what their thoughts are, or have a friendly conversation about those things, but definitely not in the professional arena. Okay, so then the professional pitch is a short practiced introduction, and the purpose is to reduce your nerves. If you have something sort of established that you lead with, then hopefully it makes you less nervous. It's a way to introduce yourself to a future employer. You can share your interest in the organization or position, and you highlight a specific skill, knowledge, or experience that's going to make you a good match for the opportunities that you're talking about. You want to deliver it with a warm, confident tone and a clear voice. If you mumble, then they can't understand what you're saying, right? You want to have open and welcome body language. You might want to curl up in a ball in the corner, but you don't want to be hunched over or things like that while you're talking to people in this manner. And you don't want it to sound scripted. When I say a practiced introduction, this isn't something that you write down and memorize and know word for word, because then you're going to get nervous and flustered because you're not sure if the words are coming out in the right order or those kinds of things. The idea is to have some things in mind that you would incorporate into this. The idea is to have it be a conversation. You're not just talking at this person. You want to lead them to talk back to you and ask you questions as well. So having an idea of, you're going to lead off with your name, your major, whether you're looking for an internship or full-time opportunity, what area within your major you're thinking that you might pursue. If you're looking for an internship, it might be a broader area because you're not sure yet. These are the kinds of things that I would be interested in having an internship in, because I haven't decided exactly which area I want to focus on, and that's okay. All right, employer events. You can find employer events that are low and no cost on Eventbrite. I often recommend recommend students to go to meetup.com to find the people that are doing the things that they want to do and just hang out with them. Sometimes, the meetup.com, if you're not familiar, has lots of different categories, hobbies and things like that, but they have a business and career category, and under that you can search for industry specific groups. So they may be getting together to learn a new technique, a new software platform, or they may just be getting together at a local restaurant to, just talk to each other about, industry related things or life or whatever. So getting in front of people that are doing the things that you want to do and just being able to talk to them, you can learn a lot, and you never know what might lead to an internship opportunity. Career fairs or information sessions that your university or college might be putting on. Conferences, often schools have scholarships where students can attend conferences, or you might get the fee waived if you put together a presentation for the conference. Maybe you're doing research with a professor or something like that. So lots of different ways to find employer events, both on and off campus. All right, so making connections on social media. This is going to be extremely important as we're all isolated for the next however long, right? So it does have broader reach and it's convenient. It's a way that you can showcase your achievements. With a resume, you're limited in what you can share. With a social media profile, you have a little more flexibility in what you can showcase. And it's good for researching. You're maybe not ready to apply yet. You still want to know what the options are. Social media is a great place to research companies, find professional or related groups, follow companies, see what kinds of job opportunities companies hire for and what skills you might need for those opportunities. So this can be, this can take place on LinkedIn, which is obviously the #1 professional social media site, but more and more companies have, Facebook accounts, Twitter, Instagram. So there are listservs and blogs. So, do some exploring to see what the key things for your industry would be to help with your job search. All right, maintaining your network. As I mentioned before, you don't want to just collect connections. You want to build a network. You ask someone to connect and they accept your connection request. So the first thing you want to do is send them a message saying, thank you for accepting my connection request, and maybe remind them how you know each other, what was the connection. Comment on social media discussions in a thoughtful manner. If you're just looking at content online, then you're not, if the purpose is to use social media for your job search, if you're just looking at content and not interacting with content, then you're not getting yourself out there. Because it's online, there's not people to interact with. So if you're just looking and scrolling and maybe liking but not commenting, then you're not getting your presence out there. You want to keep online conversation polite and courteous at all times. Just basic rule of etiquette. Comment with embedded links to other great content. Show that you understand what the article is talking about, and extend the conversation with related content. You want to demonstrate experience and expertise through the comments. Showing that you understand what the article is about, maybe relate it to something that you're working on. Remember, making yourself memorable by engaging on LinkedIn and other social media platforms. Okay, so you have to have a plan. I talked in the beginning about how this can be overwhelming. With the digital world, there's so many options. Where do I even start? So it helps to have a plan. Create a target list of employers. Who are you trying to get on board with, right? Create a strategic job search plan. How am I going to go about my job search? And you want to track your job search progress. Who have you applied to? Who have you heard back from? Maybe make a spreadsheet. I'm sure there are apps for this. I've looked at a couple. Whatever works for you as far as tracking, to know who you've followed up with, who you've heard back from, and all of those things. All right, so You want to know who you are and what you want. That's the first step in starting your job search, because part of making it less overwhelming is narrowing down the choices by knowing what it is that you're looking for. Search by industry, terminology, and skills in addition to job titles and majors. You want to use a variety of approaches to search for jobs. Don't just apply online and hope for the best. You know, especially if that's not getting you any responses, look at how can I network? How can I get in front of the people that are doing the jobs that I want to do? You know, connect with alumni on LinkedIn, you know, ask questions about how you can best improve your application. Have people look at your resume and see, you know, are you missing something? Is there something else? Is there a different way that you can be putting your information together? And you want to find and attend employer connection events. Right now, a lot of those are going to be online. But again, we talked through tips of how to network through social media. So there's still things that you can do to advance your job search, even when we can't gather together in person. All right, so these are some resources that are on the San Jose State Career Center page, but again, it's on the website, so anyone can access these guides. We have a job and internship search guide that talks about some of the things that I've talked about today. We have a resume cover letter guide and an interviewing guide. And if you are a San Jose State undergraduate student, you can sign up for appointments with me through either Spartan Connect for my ESSC appointments, or through Handshake. For the next 4 weeks, they're going to be offered via Zoom because my kids are affected by the shutdowns. So I'll be working from home, but I am still working. I'm still available to meet with you for appointments via Zoom. So thank you. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer those now. Carol raised her hand. So how do I do this, Rich? So click on the Q&A. All right. So Carol, please ask to recommend job search tracking apps or sites and how to organize your job search. Honestly, Carol, I've looked at some apps and I think probably, you know, because each person's job search is going to be different, I think that probably the best tracking device would be a spreadsheet, because then you can input all the employers that you have applied to, maybe their websites, the names of the job titles, maybe a link to the job description that you applied to. Because the apps that I've looked at are somewhat restrictive, or you know, there's always one thing that, you know, that doesn't fit with what I would want if I were looking at a job search tracking app. So we actually have a job search plan worksheet in our job and internship search guide on the San Jose State website that I had shared. So that's a sort of a pre-planning guide as far as identifying which companies that you want to apply for. But I think, honestly, a spreadsheet is really good for tracking your job search activities, because then you can color code, you know, who you've heard back from, who you followed up with, and all of those things. So that's my specific recommendation on that. Pragya, I'm sorry if I'm not saying your name correctly. As a college grad student, should you only apply for new grad positions? Depends on where you are in your schooling. There are master's level internships, but look at the qualifications for the job. You know, sometimes they'll say they prefer a bachelor's or a master's. So I would say look at the qualifications for the job. But new grad positions can be either for bachelor's or for master's. So if you're currently a grad student, then new grad positions for bachelor's wouldn't necessarily be appropriate. Do full-time jobs need experience? That depends. I mean, if they are new grad positions, they're not necessarily expecting you to have experience. And even if it says 1 to 3 years experience, you're getting experience through school. So I would say, again, look at what the job description asks for. Every job description is going to have different requirements. All right. Sally, as international students, what can we do if our experiences in our home country is harming us in getting internships? I'm reached out for full-time jobs, not internships, since I have 8 years experience and now I'm doing my master's. Okay, all right. So I'm assuming, Sally, that your work experience is in a different field, perhaps. So I guess a couple of different things. You can make it more clear on your resume and profile what opportunities you're looking for now. You can choose to leave that experience off or describe it in a different way. If you're being picked up on because of keywords that are being used in the description of your experience, and now you're looking for a different opportunity, then maybe change the way you describe that experience to gear it more towards either more general skills that employers are looking for, like I had talked about, leadership and teamwork and things like that, so that maybe the keywords for the specific skills are not being picked up. But this is where an objective or a summary might be helpful on your resume as far as identifying what it is that you're looking for. But there's also, especially if you're talking about, say, a LinkedIn, that people are going to key on what you have on your profile. So you may just have to, in responding, be polite and say, thank you for the opportunity, but that doesn't exactly fit where I am in my search right now, and explain to them what you are looking for. So you're not burning any bridges, and maybe they come back with another opportunity. So there's lots of different things that you can do for that. Okay, Carol, we do have a graduate student counselor, and her name is Carrie McKnight here at San Jose State. She does drop-ins at the Engineering Success Center as well on Wednesdays from 1:30 to 3:30. And she also does appointments in the Career Center. So you can find her on our About Us page on the Career Center website. And she would be happy to help you. And I know she's putting together some panels and workshops that we're looking to move online as well. So we definitely provide services for graduate students as well. Why does my resume get rejected from the very first stage? Having not seen the resume, that's a hard one to answer, but as I said earlier, sometimes it's because of the way it's formatted. Sometimes it's the way that you talk about your experience or what you're prioritizing on the resume. I would take a look at our resume cover letter guide and see if there might be areas of improvement for your resume, and also be looking at the job description and make sure that you're addressing the skills and qualifications that the employer is looking for, because that's key to getting through that first hurdle. Do you think ATS by companies is a fair way to shortlist candidates? I'm not prepared to talk about ATS is very varied, and companies use them different ways. Certainly there are ways that companies use ATSs that I would disagree with, but that's a different fight. What you can do as a candidate is prepare the best resume that you possibly can by focusing on how you describe your skills and what you focus on your resume, and making sure that you're meeting the ATS requirements so that the ATS is not a barrier to moving forward in the hiring process. We have a specific section in our resume cover letter guide that talks about ATS tricks and tips. So I would check to make sure that the formatting of your resume is not what's tripping you up with that. You've mentioned that we shouldn't just apply online and wait for the best, but how do we follow up with online positions? Okay, that's a good question. There may or may not be a contact person on the job posting. But regardless, you know the company. So worst case scenario, you can contact the HR department for that company and tell them what position you applied for. You know, our typical rule of thumb is if you haven't heard anything in a week or two, reach out to the company and say something like, I applied for this position on this date through this medium, you know, whether it was LinkedIn or Handshake or what have you. And I was wondering what the hiring timeline was for that position. I'm really interested in the position, and I was just looking to know when I might hear something back. So something like that. So regardless of whether there's specific contact information included in the job description itself, you can always contact the HR department for that company, and they may or may not have answers for you, but that's how you can follow up. I don't have a technical bachelor's degree, but I'm pursuing a technical master's degree. Most jobs that have an MS require much more technical experience than I have, and jobs that are technical at my technical level are restricted to only bachelor's. That's a very good question. This is a wonderful situation where I would recommend connecting with people in the industry and talking to them specifically about your situation, because because it's going to be different for every field. And playing up what your previous experience does offer the company. So focusing on, you know, instead of focusing on what you don't have, focus on what you do have. And as far as jobs that are restricted to bachelors, if you're still allowed to apply for them, and if you're currently pursuing the master's degree, it can't hurt to go ahead and apply. All right, how do I build leadership skills? Okay, so that's an excellent question. Take a leadership role in a group project. Join a student organization and volunteer to help out, even if you're not one of the officers. There are ways to be a leader without having a leadership title. There are lots of, I would suggest talking to the student involvement office if you're a San Jose State student, Jackie. The student involvement office has lots of leadership programming. The Career Center and the leadership, and student involvement do a leadership and career conference that should be in October. We're still waiting to schedule the specific date. The student involvement office will have lots of leadership programming if you want specific, like skill building in leadership. Mostly I would say you build leadership skills by activities. All right, I'm an international student and don't have a lot of experience. How do I build up my resume as I'm not allowed to work out on campus? There are internships that you would, okay, I'm gonna take a breath. We have an international student and scholars, if you are a San Jose State student, Tanisha, there is an office that can help you with navigating that. You can do internships. My understanding is that you have to be on campus for a year before you can work off campus, but other opportunities would be to talk to your professors about projects that they might be doing on campus that you could help out with. Or there are lots of other ways to build skills through your academic projects, through courses on LinkedIn or Learning or Coursera, or so there are other ways to build skills. Work experience and internships are wonderful, but they're not the only way to build skills. Personal projects, I mean, you can talk, maybe the professors aren't doing a project that you could help them out with, but they might have a recommendation for a project that you could do on your own, maybe using school resources or not. So there are lots of ways to build skills, even if you can't work off campus. What are some alternatives to summer internship? How can I still improve my skills if I don't get one? This is an excellent question. I get this a lot. And some of the things that I just said answer that question as well. Talk to your professors about what projects or skills you can build on your own. set up your own sort of summer internship where you're taking course content through an online source, or setting yourself up a timeline and a project that you want to complete on your own. Depending on what your field is, that could be harder or easier, but there are absolutely ways to build skills. If you don't get a summer internship, don't despair. Just find an alternative way to build skills through personal projects, or simply, you know, taking coursework and building skills in different areas that you're either unfamiliar with or need some additional proficiency in. All right, what resume context should be changed with respect to job description instead of sending a generic resume? Okay, so you want to look at, I did mention, you know, which projects are you sharing? Are you sharing projects or work experience that's going to highlight the skills that that the company is looking for? As I mentioned, when I say customizing it to an individual job description, you're not necessarily rewriting your whole resume. You're looking at, you know, what's important to the employer. So it can be as simple as the order of that you list your skills in. You want to have the skills that they're most interested in at the top or the front of that list, depending on how you're formatting your list of skills. You want to share projects that highlight the skills that you have that match the job description. You want to even possibly order the bullets when you're describing your experience. You know, the ones that the company might be most interested in based on their job description, you would want to put first. Depending on the job description, you know, they might really emphasize teamwork. So you want to make sure that when you're talking about any experience where you actually worked on a team, you make sure that that's coming across on the resume. So it can be little things like that. You're not necessarily having to rewrite your whole resume. It's just, how are you highlighting the content, and are you using the correct content to get their attention for a particular position? All right. I don't know, Cassandra, this is long, so I don't think I'm going to read this all out loud. I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to determine what the crux of the question is, and that's what I'll share. So, okay, so if I can distill this down, Cassandra, you applied to 3 different summer internships. The one that you most want, you haven't heard back from. One of the ones that you want a little bit less has given you a deadline to respond as to whether you would accept their offer or not, and now you're not sure what to do. So I actually just had this exact same conversation with a student worker in the Career Center office last week. So what you do is you contact the one that you haven't heard back from, and you ask, you do the follow-up that I had mentioned earlier in the presentation, as far as, I was just wondering what the timeline is in the process, when I might expect to hear something back. And then hopefully they give you useful information, so then you can go to the other employer that's only given you a week and say, I'm still in the process of doing some other interviews, and I want to make sure that I'm making the right decision. Would it be possible to get another week or 2 weeks or whatever the timeline is? Students are often scared of telling employers that they are interviewing for other positions. Employers would be dumb to think that you're only applying for their position and only interviewing with their position. So they appreciate honesty. And if they can't, if their timeline doesn't allow to give you more than a week to make the decision, then you need to decide, is it worth saying yes so that you have something, and then you make the most out of that position, even though it may not be your top choice? Or do you say no and hope that something else materializes? So that's the gamble, and I can't make that call for you. That'd be something that you would have to decide for yourself. But that's sort of the process. You want to reach out to the person that you haven't heard from, see if you can find out more information about the time frame that they're working on, so that you can reach out to the company that you have heard from. Because if we're talking about summer opportunities, it's still rather early, and you know, everybody likes to get their ducks in a row and get everything sorted and situated, but there's no real reason that you have to reply by March 20th or whatever the case may be to set up for a summer opportunity that's not going to start for another 3 months. So if they're not willing to work with you on giving you more time, then you have to decide whether that's really something that you want to pursue. Hopefully that answers your question, Cassandra. All right, 5 minutes, 7 minutes. Sorry, I can't do math. You know, not two signs. All right, let's see. I think Layla raised her hand. Do you recommend us having some interviews despite the fact we are not completely ready? Absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. If you are offered an opportunity to interview, the answer is always yes if you can make the schedule work, even if it's not something that you're particularly interested in, because interviewing is always good practice. You might learn something in the interview that, you know, maybe you're thinking you're not ready, but if they're asking you to interview, then you obviously have something that they're interested in. Now, I just realized I might be reading your question wrong. If you're saying you're not ready for the interview, that's a different story. You always want to be prepared for the interview, but if you think that, but if your concern is you're not ready for the position, if they're offering you an interview, then they're clearly seeing something in your skill set that that they're interested in. So, but in general, the answer is always yes. If someone offers you an interview, you say yes, because if nothing else, it's good practice. You get live feedback, you know, as far as moving forward. And obviously don't tell them that you're just doing it for practice, because it may turn into something else. But the answer is always yes to interviews. Okay. Zoe, I have already thanked my interviewer after an internship position, but I haven't heard back since. Okay. All right. So you sent your follow-up after the interview, but then you haven't heard back. So if it has been, again, the same rule applies to applying and not hearing back. If they gave you a time frame of when you might hear back, then you would respect that time frame. And if that time frame has gone by and you still haven't heard back, it would be absolutely appropriate to follow up again. If they didn't give you a specific time frame, and it's been a couple of weeks, you can absolutely follow up again, and just, you know, restate that you're interested in the position, and just ask, you know, that you were curious about what the time frame is when you might expect to hear something back, and ask if there's anything else that you can do to help with the process. Okay. All right. How do we find volunteer positions or internships for recent graduates? Is campus still helping? The Career Center, if you're talking about San Jose State, the Career Center does a college to career boot camp for recent graduates just after the semester is over. If you graduated this past December, you still have access to Handshake for at least 12 months post-graduation, and after that you can still maintain Handshake access by joining with an alumni membership, which I believe is only $25 a year. That still grants you access to Handshake. We can't do in-person in-person appointments, and the eligibility for services is under the alumni section on the Career Center website for more specific details. But there are lots of ways to find positions even if you're not a current student. For example, the San Jose Public Works office serves the entire community, and they work out of the 3rd floor of the MLK library. So there are lots of ways to still get help in your job search. How to train yourself to increase interviewing skill, how to present yourself well. Okay, So for San Jose State students, we have an interview app called Big Interview that you would create an account with your SJSU email. If you are not a San Jose State student, there are lots of online resources that talk about common interview questions that you can prepare for. Find someone to reach out to practice with, maybe one of your friends or one of your professors to give you feedback. 2 minutes. All right, I've got 3 last questions, so I'm gonna try to rush through these real quick. Is it a good idea to reach out to HR recruiters on LinkedIn for internship opportunities? Absolutely. If it's a company that you're interested in working for, you can actually absolutely reach out to them. Worst they can do is either ignore you or say they don't have anything available. But as long as you're reaching out in a professional manner, respecting their time, explaining to them what it is that you're interested in, there's no harm in reaching out through LinkedIn. I'm an international student. Can we do internships in any other country except for the USA? I believe the answer is yes, but again, I'm not an expert on employment for international students. I don't know all of the laws, but you should absolutely talk to the International Student Office on your campus, whether that's San Jose State or whatever campus you are from. Because you should absolutely be able to do that beyond the first year restriction that I'm aware of. But I would say talk to people that are more knowledgeable to me to get a more specific answer on that one. And how do we prepare for the interview? And I just answered that. At least for San Jose State students, you would use Big Interview, or you can set up a mock interview appointment with our office. You can go on Glassdoor and you can look up what common people actually report what interview questions they've been asked from different companies. So even if the company that you're interviewing with doesn't have specific information on Glassdoor, you can look for a similar job title and things like that for what kinds of questions to prepare for. For technical interviews for software, there's all kinds of resources, LeetCode and HackerRank. Here at San Jose State, we even have a whole student organization called Hoplite, Hoplite, that their sole purpose is to prepare for technical interviews if that's your area of interest. So I think we are out of time. Thank you for all the wonderful questions. Hopefully I answered them appropriately, and thanks for joining us.